Hey everybody, welcome back to Shutter Magazine. I'm Dustin Lucas, and in my article today, I'm talking about neutrals and newborns in no time. And what I'm looking to do is save time in your retouching, and that's where I want to focus on Lightroom. Lightroom is the essential tool to saving time and replicating, editing image to image to get through an entire set. Because inevitably, you're looking to deliver the work as fast as you can. It's not like a wedding or an engagement session. Most of your newborn or your family or your baby sessions, they're wanting their images back quite fast. Especially like with my wife when we're shooting my son, like in this series. She's wanting the images as soon as I get done with them. And so I'm trying to develop a little bit faster of a workflow to get the images edited and ultimately back to her. She's not my client, but it's about saving time. So starting out in Lightroom, something that something in this shoot and what I had done for this particular article is I'm working on getting neutrals in the skin tones and working with the skin tone, my subject, my son, and this background, this gray wall. So I shot this image a little overexposed, which is going to help a little bit with some of those coloring skin tone issues. And you're seeing that my strobes are splashing on the wall behind. The lighting's not too even. Not to worry. I didn't get this perfect in camera, but I shot a little bit brighter. Sort of a quick setup here, and we're going to use Lightroom to clean it up. So what I do is I start by working with presets. Lightroom and presets go hand in hand. Building a preset and a workflow around that can really speed up your time. So I have here as a starting point preset, just getting taking my image here, and it's going to start by pulling the contrast down, working with the highlights, shadows. You can see all these adjustments are about the same. I don't have any HSL adjustments. I have a camera calibration, which I set to camera neutral, which is going to be a little bit different than Adobe standard. But I do that to sort of neutralize the image. It kind of gives it a little bit, a little nicer of a white balance here starting out. And I'm going to go ahead and with that and building that preset, all you need to do is hitting Shift Command N. It's going to allow you to build a new developed preset. So you can include any of these settings that you're adjusting, name them, and then you can actually put them in a set. So I can, in my set personal presets, I can name this whatever I want. So I already have it set up for starting point, which is a great place to be in. And then from there, I have exposure adjustments where I'm doing -25, negative 50, which is half a stop, -1 full stop. Then I also have on the positive side, as you can see how it's changing just the exposure, and how I'm doing that is whenever I make an adjustment here, say for instance if I wanted to do plus 2.0, definitely don't want to go that bright, but if I wanted to save this just as a preset, I can choose just exposure, and then I can type in my name in accordance to how I have these labeled so that way they stay in a certain order. And so that allows you to save a preset per setting, or per specific adjustment tool. So I'm going to go ahead and back up here, kind of get the image a little bit closer and wipe an exposure where I'd kind of have it at probably about negative zero point 0.5 is about where I'd have this image. And so you can work down the line. I have a contrast reset, which it puts my contrast back to 0. I have a -25, a +25. Contrast, as far as resetting that, I usually have it kind of set into the negatives. For this one, I had it for -10, which is perfectly fine. Pulling out a little bit of contrast to get the working with tone curve, things like that can definitely help. Moving down the line, I have one built for highlights, so I can start to do -25 highlights, -50, -75, -100. So just kind of going down the line, just quick selecting. I also have some tone curve adjustments here. These are custom tone curves. So when I select, say, let me just work on like an S curve, which is pretty standard, just a pretty typical S curve tone curve. We can do one with flat blacks. We can do one with flat whites. As you can see, it's moving my tone curve down on this right hand side where it's kind of pulling down the whites. The same thing it would do if you put the whites in the negatives here. Pretty similar. As you can see, it's starting to shrink my histogram and only allowing me to get to right up into where we're in the white point. And so I can go and do the same thing with the blacks. It's going to allow me to flatten those blacks almost right to the edge to where I'm barely getting any black point there. I also have a S curve flat, so it gives me a little bit of a contrast, but it flattens the black and white tones. I'm going to go ahead and leave that on for now. And moving down the line, I kind of like the way that that looks, sort of showing a before and after. We can go down, and there's also ones you can make for HSL, which is great. So you can do one for no blue, which is just going to pull some blue tones out of the saturation. As you can see, a little bit of this bluish cast in the background. Turning that on kind of gets rid of it. Doesn't really get rid of a whole lot, but it's a good preset to have. Another one as well. You can pull reds down, greens down as well when you're shooting outdoors, and it helps with red saturation with the skin. And you can also create a red skin preset, which is going to lift the luminance on his skin and also drop the saturation down. So that kind of helps. It also throws the hue towards the green side, so it kind of removes some of that reddish cast and kind of warms up the skin a bit. You can kind of see the difference in just that little preset does. It doesn't fix the pink hands and feet and some of the different coloring on his skin tone as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep moving down. Now you can build one for lens correction where you can choose it to be on or off. I definitely have it and recommend putting it in the default setting for the setup here, so it's not choosing your last camera lens. It's gonna adjust the camera lens, per lens you're using. So from there, you can also use on detail. You can do noise reduction as well, plus 25, plus 50, plus 75. So those work out really well for you to just do a quick preset, and we can zoom in here and start to see those effects happening if I turn them on and off, as well as sharpening. So we can bring back some of that sharpening while we're doing the noise reduction. And that kind of just does a really nice sharpening and softening for the skin overall. And so what we're looking at now is we're ready to start doing some retouching. So I'm gonna adjust this image a little bit further and take it to, maybe a little bit darker than I would go here, adding some other adjustments. The tone curve might be a little heavy. We'll leave it on for now, but I probably want to pull my whites down and maybe drop the highlights a bit. I'm pretty happy with that image overall. We haven't even started on white balance, and what I like to do in working with white balance tool, I can choose that background to sort of neutralize this and try to get it as neutral as possible. So if I'm choosing my different areas, of course it's going to pick up on where the cooler and warmer tones are. I can choose the white to get an absolute white. There seems to be some magenta tones in that, so that's not the best place to start at. But I'm going to go ahead and leave the white balance here, and we're going to start doing some more local adjustments. So what I want to do too is work on the HSL specifically on his skin, and what we can do that with is a target adjustment tool. To activate that, we're going to do Shift, Option, Command, and we'll start with saturation. And that immediately opens up our HSL panel and activates the saturation target adjustment tool. So I can actually click and drop this down. As you can see, it starts to pull some of that orange yellow tones out of his skin. I can do the same thing, Shift Option Command L for luminance, which is going to be good to lift lift the skin tone. We want to go too bright, so we're going to make them too pale, but it allows us to just make it a little bit brighter. Now by turning this on and off, we can kind of see we've kind of reduced the harsh red tones that the preset, the tone curve kind of put in, but this is kind of neutralizing a little bit, kind of going back to a softer pink look. So in looking at that, I definitely want to make sure I can pick on his foot where the luminance is really picking up on those red tones. I can pick up on his foot with the saturation and drop that down. As you can see, it's doing just those red tones. If I'm on his stomach, it's going to introduce some of the yellow. So you can see how some of those are changing there. Difference between foot and on his skin. I can also drop down whatever these tones are in this chair. As you can see, it starts to pull down a lot of blues and a lot of this background tone as well. So if we turn this on and off, it's kind of giving us a little, some little changes that we can work on in this image to start to try and separate the difference between the background and the subject matter here. So in working with this luminance as well, let's see here, let's activate the luminance target adjustment tool. We can lift that up doesn't seem to be finding too much. We can drop those blue tones down. It's going to try to drop everything. That's not really helping us out too much. So I'm going to go ahead and reset those. For now, I'm going to leave this adjustment as it is. And this is something that I could sync to all of my images in my set. So I could actually sync these, the hue and saturation to my entire, as long as my, my white balance was set to manual, and I could sync it to all the images. And it gives me a really good starting point to go from here. Now I'm going to bring down the luminance just a little bit. I don't need to go that bright. Let's go a little more, do some local adjustments and start working with this skin. So I'm going to hit the K key, and that's going to allow us to start working with removing some of this reddish cast in the skin and smooth the skin and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I have my presets here already built. Like I said, presets are great, great to work with. I have the red skin removal, which is going to warm the skin up towards the yellow. It's going to add some green tones to remove the red. We're going to remove contrast, lifting some shadows, dropping the whites, dropping some blacks in this, as well as some saturation. So we're going to zoom in here. I am going to get rid of my left side panel. We're going to zoom in just a little bit here. And we are going to start painting. Now, notice that with this brush, there's two sort of edges here. We want to work with this inner edge to make sure that we are applying this adjustment to his face. So as we're selecting, working in there, you notice I have auto mask already selected, and if we hit show our mask, it's going to mask out his eye pretty nicely. I know I only did the one, but as you can see, if I turn that off, I'll have to go in and actually manually remove that adjustment by holding my option key and clicking on his eye. Now, of course, my brush, I have to be a little more specific. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to make sure I'm painting right around the eye. I'm trying to remove as much of that adjustment as we can, as well as his lips are fine. But what we can do is, you'll notice with the mask, is we're going to keep painting. We'll just paint it pretty close. And it does a pretty good job. I don't have to be too particular about my edges. As you can see, it just kind of grabs everything that I need it to. That does a pretty good job. Now I kind of got some of the diaper down here. That's going to happen. I also need to grab some of his ear. Grab all the ear. We're zooming in down here, and we're going to notice that we grabbed some of the diaper here, and it shouldn't have. So we're going to hold our option key, make our brush a little bit bigger. We're just going to mask some of that out. Now that we've created, and we're going to kind of go in here and make sure we didn't lose any of those tones. We don't want his toes to fall off in any way. So now what we're looking to do is we can turn this mask off. We no longer need it. What we can do is, now that we've applied that, we can sort of turn this on and off and kind of see it's warming his skin up a little bit. We don't need it to go that much, so we can probably bring that warmth down, bring up the exposure, and let's kind of see. It's doing wonders for the feet. So if you notice the feet and the hands here, this is what it turned on, this is what it turned off, and you can just kind of see that it just removes that harshness and some of that pink in there, and just kind of makes the skin look a little more even overall. So what we can do now is we can duplicate, since we've already created this mask. This is perfect for us to do skin smoothing. So we can either build skin smoothing into the same preset, or I like to have it a little bit separate to change the settings. So what we can do is right click on it, duplicate, and now we can do skin smoothing, and it actually applies the skin smoothing to the entire image with the same masked out parts with the eyes. We're still masked out with the eyes here. Now we can go in and we can mask out the lips. well. And this, it might be a little bit too soft. So we can either do two things. We can either drop the clarity or we can drop the density of this preset. So we can take this effect, drop it down. I'm going to put the density at 50. As you can see, we're getting a little nasty here. We want to make sure that our masks aren't doing too much work to some of those pixels there. Sure not. That's one thing about auto masks. You definitely got to keep an eye on your adjustments and making sure that everything is being applied properly. Especially around these edges. The edges are a little hard. Go on and kind of clean some of those up. It's really important. As you can see, it didn't do as nice of a job as I would have liked it to. We can go in and clean all that back up quite quickly in here. And so with this tool, as you can see, we've quickly reduced the red tones and softened the skin a bit. Might be a little bit too much still. I'm going to bring the clarity back up. I'm going to zoom out here, kind of look at our before and after here. We can zoom in on him and sort of see. He might be getting a little bit warm. We can always fix that at the end with the skin tone, but you can see we've sort of working with the skin specifically. Now we can go in and create a new mask altogether for the eyes. And what we'll do is we'll do an iris enhance. Kind of brightens it up just a bit. We can duplicate this. Do an eyes whiten. Works with the pupils just a little bit. We also might want to do a little bit of dodging. So what we can do is we can create a new brush. We'll choose dodge. We'll go in here and we'll just do a little bit of dodge work. You can kind of come in here. I'm going to go back to my single. I know it's kind of weird having all the pens on. You can turn those off if you want over here. But we can come in and just work with some of these shadows around the face, kind of lighten them up a little bit. And also brighten up the legs here. A little bit of dodge work. Just kind of working there. So once we're doing some dodging and we're happy with how everything's looking with him, now we can start focusing on the background. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to start working with the graduated filters. We can work with the some of the larger scale, some of the bigger adjustment tools. So I'm gonna by striking the M key, you can activate the graduated filter, and this is going to allow us to start dragging in this adjustment for the background specifically. What we can do is we can choose burn. We want to burn down a little bit. Because this adjustment, let's rotate it, make sure it's coming from the top. We can change our angle of this adjustment and drop it all the way down. It actually allows us to mask out our subject if not, because he's going to be affected on his head. So what we need to do is hitting Shift T gives us the brush tool for the graduated filter, and by holding Option, it's going to allow us to mask him out. Now we can do Auto. See if this helps us out. Be a little quicker. So we can just go ahead and hold Auto. Can mask out the chair. We'll see how well that does just on the edges. It does an okay job. It isn't grabbing the edges as much as I'd like. So we're going to drop the feathering down a little bit. We'll turn this mask on. Turn off Auto Mask. Come in here. Come down off the chair. Make sure this whole adjustment is being removed from him. Now you could do the opposite way and just work with a local adjustment tool, and just paint the background as well. Let's see here. Just get it pretty close. Because it is a graduated filter, it's going to be a gradation down there. It does a pretty good job for fixing the top part. Now if we want to work with the bottom here, maybe we don't want to burn, maybe we want to drop some saturation. That's a great tool for us to do that, and it kind of gets rid of that warmth in the bottom there. So if we're selected here, we can drop out some of those yellow tones, but of course it's going to remove the yellow here. So we would go in again, Shift T, mask out the legs. We can keep some warmth in those still, whether you want to or not. But it kind of it's getting us closer and closer, in working with this image. But that's a a really good tool to start working with your background. Now we can go in, choose the K for the adjustment brush, and I'm going to do some burning in here. We can start to burn this down, this sort of patch. We don't want to go that far. Just trying to burn some of that down. We can drop some highlights in here. We can also work with the chair, burn the chair down just on the edges. Turn the pins off. You can see we can start to even out the background, start burning some things down here. There's some, definitely some hot spots in there. I don't want to. Let's take this back a couple. That might be a little too much. We can burning down. So overall, what we're looking to do is get this image, burning down and working with the highlights. Eventually, we'd like the image to get somewhere in the realm of here. Is where I've gotten the edit. And from there, that's going to allow us to get the background broken down, this image overall a little bit cleaner, sort of from start to finish. You see the highlights. We can work with the background independent of him. So it allows us to, with the presets, with the local adjustments, with building a solid workflow, you're seeing a lot faster processing with Lightroom. But it's also it's non-destructive. It's all here. We don't have to have a bunch of layers, create a bunch of files. Working in Lightroom, it can be much quicker. But there are some limitations you have to understand with Photoshop and Lightroom. But however, with working with these images, you can do quite a lot. And working with the skin tones and trying to bring some neutral, trying to remove some of those casts in the skin, as well as working with your background. And so, Lightroom to save time overall. But if you guys have any questions, if there's anything in your retouching workflow that you'd like to see, or things that you use differently, definitely reach out. Let me know. But that concludes this tutorial, and reach out next month. Thanks.